Federal Competition Bureau has released a report on airline competition in Canada. Among other things, it is calling for an aviation policy that prioritizes competition, easing of foreign ownership restrictions, and reform of user fee and infrastructure funding, and addressing northern and remote needs. Not surprising, our biggest carrier, Air Canada, is disputing the findings, claiming the market already offers enough competition and passenger choice, while the Canadian Airport Council supported competition goals, but cautioned against relying on foreign ownership, instead urging tailored strategies for smaller airports. Okay, so I did do up a graphic. I want that stop. There. I did do up a graphic here. And let me see. Yeah. First of all, the report says one new competitor on a route can reduce fares by an average of 9%, which is interesting. New airlines face persistent challenges, and some of those challenges, high costs, limited landing slots, fragile viability, and economic shocks. Because we are a country of only 40 million people, and our population is centered in the very lowest spot of the country. And air travel is essential for northern and remote communities. And yet, what the report says, the services are scarce and fares extremely high. For example, anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 per trip. Gee, that sounds like you're flying from Montreal to New Brunswick. $1,000. Yeah. So, are we being gouged? You know, basically, we have two main domestic carriers, Air Canada and WestJet. And then you have your regional carriers, which are all offshoots, aside from a couple of very small independent airlines serving remote areas. But the so-called regional carriers are owned and operated, leased out to other companies by Air Canada and WestJet.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So again, it's like almost like our national telecommunications. We have Bell, Rogers, and TELUS. 3. And they're all priced in around the same, and if one runs a sale, the other one runs a sale at the same price. Instead of maybe a little bit lower kind of thing. You know, there's no real competitive spirit. So are we being gouged? I understand that operating an airline in Canada with all of the fees and everything is expensive, and they're, more so than in other countries, such as a market like the US. But no shareholder in Air Canada is complaining loudly about their dividends and what their shares are valued at. I haven't heard anything from WestJet shareholders, and they're owned now by a large capital venture firm. That's not complaining. So what's going on here? Like I say, when I look at $1,000 round trip between Montreal and, you take your choice, St. John or Fredericton, that's, I paid less than that a few years ago for that round
That's
trip.
insanity. That's insanity.
Yeah, for a 1 hour flight. A 1 hour flight. So I don't get it. I really do think that we do need some more competition. And I think what will happen is you will see some companies come in, if we open it up, some companies will come in and they'll give it a go, but it won't go very far. It'll be like 3 or 4 other the discount Canadian-based airlines that tried to make a go of it. Just even in the last 4 or 5 years, like we've had Lynx.
Mm-hmm.
There was another one similar to that. Flair, is Flair still flying? Flair flying?
No. I think no. Flair ceased to operate. Flair ceased to operate. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know they were teetering on the edge.
Or WestJet acquired somebody. That's Sunwing. It was Sunwing.
Yeah, they acquired Sunwing. Yeah, and then you've got Air Transat that's doing okay with its vacation flights, and it does pick up some regular passengers as well on some of those vacation flights and going to Europe and that. So,
Gary, you look back. I mean, you look back 30 years. You look back 30 years. I mean, now we have Air Canada. WestJet is not relatively new. They've been around for a while, but let's call a mature kid on the block. But man, think 30 years back. I'm thinking about my days in aeronautical telecommunications. I mean, we had Canadian Pacific, we had Wardair, we had Nordair. I mean, there was the Quebec. There was so much competition in Canada, and then I believe when the airline industry got deregulated, like further deregulated in North America, led by the United States, you get a lot of American interests that start buying up routes that Canadian airlines used to have. Like I believe Canadian Pacific was taken over by American Airlines, if I'm not mistaken, or they got heavily involved with American Airlines to buy their route. American Airlines were bought routes that Canadian Pacific owned. So that was a start of the demise of Canadian Pacific, of CP. And, that I guess that's a little bit of a fear. So I'm saying those were the good old days. We had a lot of competition. Prices were competitive. You know what? You could probably fly out to Eastern Canada for a fraction of the price of what you and I would pay now. That's because we had a lot of airlines operating in Canada. And with the deregulation of the airline industry in North America, everything changed, and all you're left with is the heavy hitters. Same thing in the United States. You're looking at Eastern Airlines, but that was basically screwed up by Trump. So let's get on to some other airline. You look at Republic Airways. You look at Midland Airways in the United States. A lot of airlines just disappeared. Pan American Airlines. Look at, I mean, that just disappeared off the face of the earth. And now in the United States, you're left with 4 major carriers with a few regionals. And in Canada, you have 2 major airlines serving the entire country, being Air Canada and WestJet, and that's it. So, okay, great. Let's get some more competition in here. I don't think we're going to get that with the startup companies, because WestJet and Air Canada are going to do everything possible to make their lives miserable, first of all, right? Second of all, getting international money vested in launching airlines in Canada. Like you said, Gary, they're going to have to get landing rights. They're going to have to negotiate with the governments here. They're going to have to fight against Air Canada, which probably chairs most majority of the boards across the entire country. Going to make it very difficult. But then, have we not learned the lesson of what happened 30 years ago with all this international interest in the routes that we have throughout the country? So what? Air Canada might cease to exist, or who knows what? How do you get competition? I don't think we can do it with just regional carriers. It has to be a major carrier right across the country to give a run for the money for Air Canada, to Air Canada. And like you said at the beginning, as soon as this report came out, Air Canada were the first ones to cry foul. Well, the big bad bully is a little afraid right now, and they're crying foul because Air Canada is a big bad bully. And if you really think about it in terms of their monopoly across the country, as prolific as WestJet has become, and Air Transat on the international side of things, they're still a big bad boy here in Canada, and they They set the stage, they set the price, and they've got enough manpower and equipment to put aircraft on any route and charge whatever the hell they want. And it's very sad that our quote unquote national carrier makes it extremely difficult to fly across the country economically, make it very difficult to fly up north. Like you said, 80% of our population is within 100 miles of the American border or so. What about the rest of our country? I mean, there's a lot of people living above that, further north, and they pay a lot just to get a loaf of bread, because it costs so goddamn much for a flight to carry all this stuff up there, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. So, you know what, Gary? I don't know. Does the Canadian government need to step up and get some sort of regulation in terms of operating an airline in Canada, that you need to do A, B, and C, and then you can do what you want? I don't know what the answer is, Gary. Look, both you and I agree it's too freaking expensive to fly in the country. We're only 40 million people. Will people travel more if prices are less? I believe they will. I'll fly more throughout the country. I mean, I do a lot of traveling around the world, and it's cheaper for me to fly to Europe than to fly to Toronto sometimes. It makes zero sense. What about our European neighbors? I'm sure they would love to cross the country, gallivant the country, but once they land in Montreal, and then all of a sudden, all right, what are my options to fly out to Western Canada? Air Canada and WestJet. Oh my God, look at the price of this. I can tour all of Europe for that money. They have to make it easy for Canadians. By making it easy for Canadians, Gary, they're going to open up a new level of revenue from our European friends and friends from around the planet landing in Canada and being able to explore Canada. If the prices come down, they just don't make sense, Gary. They're just way too expensive right now.
Yeah, and the way that they jump, just all of a sudden, boom, like, okay, what? What's going on here? What are you offering for me or to me that is worth that much more money other than a cramped seat? And like even
and a bag of dry pretzels.
Yeah, even some of the business class offerings are not great compared to what they used to be. So, and look at what you're paying for business and first class. Like it's, you need to mortgage the house in some cases.
So if you cycle back to your first questions, are we kind of getting ripped off on high end money? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, no question about it.